and researching it, it looks exactly like and behaves exactly like Morgellons, little strings that then form balls that then other little metastasizing strings grow out of. And it uses the energy and the tissue, it uses the vitamins and minerals and oxygen to grow. And then I think back to just News 8 Austin just a few weeks ago, here in Austin with a Morgellons conference that I meant to go to, but I shouldn't have time, interviewing medical doctor after medical doctor going, we believe it's a form of nanotech. It grows, it forms these spheres and then grows. And then here it is, University of Michigan. Folks, there's all these companies developing this stuff. What do you think happens when you have thousands of biotech companies all over the world? Open air planting, part insect, part plant, part mammal, part insect, part fish, part insect. I mean, there are hundreds of different GMO salmon that are part insect, part human, cows that are part human that produce human milk, BBC, goats that are part human, chimpanzees that are part human, and this is all news. And I know yuppies are driving along that only know about the Final Four and all this, or about baseball season and the Rangers beating the Yankees, and they're like, this guy's crazy, Marge. He's talking about part spider, part human. Look, if you won't Google goats that are part human, goats that are part spider, chimpanzees that are part human. I remember the Washington Post 9 years ago said, well, the laboratories won't allow people to see it. And a few years later, I even read the article on Ian Punnett's show on Coast to Coast. He had trouble believing it until he pulled it up. And it said, but yes, down in Costa Rica, there's some of the labs, and they have part chimpanzee, part human creatures. But they won't let people in to see them, but there's some U.S. government funding for it. They do it outside the U.S. where it's legal. And the question is, do these chimpanzees that are now part human have rights? And, of course, they're doing it for organ harvesting. They've got pigs that I remember 12 years ago, BBC, that are part human that grow human hearts, and they're testing them. You know, the issue here is, what do you think all this mad science splicing is going to do? Well, there are already cases of oak trees in the U.S. with corn growing out of the side of them from GMO. Just corn stalks start growing out of the ends of the oak buds. There are all sorts of, because once you scramble a plant's DNA, when it puts its pollen out and has now widened its genome, it can cross-pollinate, not in a hybridization with plants similar to it, its same family. That's natural. You've now got a plant with fungus, pesticide that grows at 1,000 times normal levels inside of it, or that has insect genes, or that's pharmacological, thousands of those crops. Protein gene came out with one that had HIV in the corn. AP 2002 planted it open air in several areas in the U.S. until the government found out and made them burn it. I mean, I could go on for 10 hours. And anything I say, you can just Google the term I use, and it'll come right up mainstream news. But never telling you it's dangerous. So, of course, there's all these companies and universities and labs looking at nanotech within the body and injecting it in people that are part of trials. I mean, the government has tacitly admitted that Lyme's disease was a Nazi invention, weaponized Lyme's disease, admittedly run by Nazis at Plum Island. The head of the Nazi bioweapons system was brought there, and that deer, because it's not too far away from the East Coast coastline, when deer start starving, they'll swim miles, swam in with the Lyme's disease, and then now we have that. Also that the West Nile came from Plum Island. I mean, you know about the government injecting black people with syphilis, but now it comes out they're injecting people all over the world with syphilis. The UN's been caught. The UN's been caught adding to the Dr. Salk polio vaccine a live cancer virus knowingly. It's estimated by the U.S. government, pull it up, that over 100 million Americans from the 1950s until the latest numbers that came out a few years ago died from what were previously unknown or rare cancers. They describe some of the cancers as like purple yogurt pouring out of the nose, cancers in the sinus. I mean, just listing hundreds of these things. And so, oh, they're testing nanotech injected into the body that grows little strands. Oh, jeepers creepers. Other scientists have found citizens in the last decade with this all over the world that have it, and that's exactly what the scientists said they thought it was. And then magically, it turns out there's a whole class of research going on for decades. Let's inject people with nanotech. Do you realize that almost every corn variety in Latin America, some of them thousands of years old, has been infected by the GMO crops? The entire system is being butchered and assaulted and attacked. See, I said I'd cover this later in the show. And I will get to it more in the third hour. That is one article out of no exaggeration. I've got to have 50 or 60 here in front of me. Oh, let me tell you what else is going on. I haven't even gotten in to the top news story today. Something off the charts, incredible, but we knew it was already going on and coming, but it's incredible to see them again do exactly what we knew they would do. Going back more than 6 months ago, and previously 4 years before that, U.S., British Special Forces, CIA, MI6 were in eastern Libya with the breakaway Al-Qaeda, Wahhabist-connected, Saudi Arabian-funded groups getting ready to try to overthrow Gaddafi while the globalists made peace deals with him. It's now admitted that from day one, British Special Forces, U.S. Special Forces, and CIA have been there. That came out before the UN resolution, buried in newspapers. Now, it's in the L.A. Times today. L.A. Times today. Now, again, over a month ago, we wrote almost the exact headline with the links to the State Department's admissions. But here it is. This is L.A. Times. Again, not tooting our horn. How many times are we 100% right? Libyan rebel story shows links to Taliban, Al-Qaeda, NATO. And they go on to admit from the beginning it was launched by NATO with Al-Qaeda and Taliban help. L.A. Times. Nothing new to this audience. Okay? This just came out a day ago in the L.A. Times. Now, what did the EU announce yesterday? The EU calling the shots. The EU tells the UN to do a resolution. They have a resolution. Within 36 hours, Obama doesn't even consult Congress, launches an attack. Remember all of that. Openly establishing the UN as the world government and the EU giving them the orders. Now, and who owns the majority of our private Federal Reserve? EU-based banks, not American banks. Where did most of the bailout money go? Foreign banks, and to buy off corporations. Remember, we're being colonized again through economic slavery. Now, what did the EU announce last night? And I'm very proud of Watson. Even before The Guardian had their report out, Watson had his out, and then he later added The Guardian's link in there when they came out with it off the YouTube video a listener sent him of the EU announcing they are going to the UN with the authorization to put in 1,000 or more humanitarian troops who will help take over the country, the roads and infrastructure, and if Gaddafi resists them, it's called terrorism. So they're bombing him from the air, coming in with Al-Qaeda, the advisors, the troops, the weapons being brought in out of Egypt that first had to be taken down because Mubarak wouldn't go along with this. All Saudi Arabia bringing weapons and fighters in. The whole time, U.S. ships massed off the coast with Marines, British ships with Marines. March 2nd, the Marine Corps commander at Camp Lejeune said we're preparing for ground invasion, and more ships shipped out. They've now arrived. They're massing the fleet off, and Obama said, in fact, look for this clip, I meant to tell you. Now go to YouTube, type in something like, Obama pledges we will never have ground troops. Remember, he said just 4 weeks ago, we will never have ground troops. You have my promise on that. U.S. ground troops were already in there. He knows that. I mean, it's just, I thought Bill Clinton was bad saying, how dare you, I did not have sex with that woman, Monica Lewinsky. How dare you? Just brazen lying, doesn't get in trouble for it. Well, this is lying about this war, regardless of what you think of Gaddafi and his clown suits. The point is, he made a deal 6 years ago, gave up his WMDs, played nice, and now they're trying to have Al-Qaeda-backed groups overthrow him, and our stinking government takes UN orders to do it, lies to us, and says bombing every square inch of the infrastructure, the government buildings, the military bases, all of it. That's not war. That's a kinetic action. Then there's advisors all over helping organize and give weapons to the rebels. And they admitted a month ago, U.S. and British forces on the ground lasing Gaddafi government targets, targeting them. They call that's not a war. Somebody aims a laser at your house and they drop a 2,000-pound bomb on it. That's not war. That's humanitarian. Now they admit, yes, they're getting the ground invasion ready. And then it gets even more insane. I told you about this all over the country. New York's moving to ban dodgeball, tag, King of the Hill. Again, it doesn't matter what you think of war. Some of you probably feel manly when you watch CNN or Fox and see mushroom clouds, burning cities. Boy, America's getting them. America's showing them. The very same banking cartel using our military, our tax money, our power that we paid for in our name to invade and attack all these countries could care less about you, just like they could care less about Iraqis. They could care less about the Chinese people. The globalists pride themselves on being sadomasochistic and very ruthless. But remember, all of those promises over and over and over again. In fact, we'll just put it into the search engine and put a news article on screen. White House promises, pledges, I think that was the headline, White House pledges no ground troops in Libya. Their U.S. commandos were there at the time they said that. They lie to you as a course of action. There it is, Obama, no U.S. forces on the ground in Libya except for those guys. That's NPR. And that was a March 23rd article. This is the essence of just a wall of lies and deception. And now the EU is going to the UN for another resolution saying they're prepared to invade. And then there's more Orwellian lies. They say, oh, it's a peace group that's going to take over the waterways and the highways, and they're going to basically demand to roll into cities for humanitarian purposes in a war they started, a war with rebels they funded, and that if Gaddafi doesn't, and I told you this a month ago, I mean, because you could see what they were going to do. Oh, we're not going to have ground forces, but we may have a humanitarian force with the UN, and if Gaddafi doesn't let them go into the cities, it's an act of war. So they bomb you, they fund rebels to attack you, they put ground troops in, and as they roll forward with their weapon systems firing at you, if you don't go out and take your shirt off and say, please kill me, or wave a white flag, then you're a terrorist. And then they tell our public, oh, we're just being humanitarian, dropping bombs on them. There's no ground troops but the ground troops. And the Marine Corps commander at Lejeune goes, no, we're invading. We're getting on ships to go invade. That's the plan. March 2nd. That's a month and 17 days ago. A month and 17 days ago. That's almost 6 weeks ago. The Marines are loading on ships to ship out. There's other ships already there with Marines, 2,000 of them, 2,000 Brits on another amphibious attack craft. These floating amphibious invasion ships, and they call this peace. This is directly out of 1984. And let me just read to you some of these headlines. Breaking, EU preparing to launch ground invasion in Libya, prisonplanet.com, Infowars.com. Paul Watson's new key article, pretext for war on Libya, proven fraudulent by casualty figures. And the government of NATO system even admits that the Western powers are the ones racking up the real casualties. And that Gaddafi didn't strafe crowds, and it was almost all lies, but he didn't run to Venezuela. That was lies. His son wasn't killed. That was a lie. They don't care. Here's the Sun. Brits join ground fight in Libya. They've always been there since this started. Here's another one with my breakdown and video, Infowars.com. Alex Jones on EU ground invasion of Libya. Here's the LA Times. Yesterday, Libyan rebels story shows links to Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and NATO. And then they go on to admit the main core group is Al-Qaeda and Taliban, backed by NATO from the start. Here's the London Guardian. Libyan conflict. EU awaits UN approval for deployment of ground troops. But it's humanitarian. Yes, they're bringing in arms. Yes, they're advising on how to attack. But it's not military. Bombs dropping from the sky. Not military. Okay, we're going to have a completely jam-packed third hour coming up in T-minus 60 minutes. We're going to get into the ground troops that are already in Libya. And now the announcement by the EU, they're getting ready to send in a larger force who will attack, if you actually read the fine print, the Libyan government. If they fight back, it'll be outrageous. If they fight back against the bombs dropping out of the sky, it's outrageous. And it's going to be build terrorism and to fight back against the imperial forces. and then a larger invasion force will go in. Also,